While most men are chasing attention, a small percentage are building power, while others are obsessing over message timing, analyzing read receipts, rehearsing conversations in their heads, refreshing apps, wondering why she has not replied, trying to decode what a three-word response means about the state of something that barely exists. Yet, a small group of men has gone quiet. Not because they failed, not because they gave up, because they made a choice. A deliberate, considered, non negotiable choice to redirect the energy that most men pour into the pursuit of romantic validation and put it somewhere that compounds. You will not see these men in the same places. They are not in the comments section performing confidence. They are not on the apps cycling through the same exhausting loop of investment and disappointment. They are in the gym at 6 in the morning. They are at the desk at 10 at night, finishing something that matters. They are in rooms with other serious men talking about money and strategy and the specific kind of future they are constructing with intention. And here is what nobody tells you about these men. When they surface, when the building phase produces what building phases produce, and they return to the social world with something real underneath them, everything about how they move has changed. The posture, the calm, the specific quality of a person who does not need anything from the room because the room is not where his foundation lives. The man who delays romance often dominates later, not as a reward for deprivation, as the natural consequence of compound interest applied to human development. The same mechanism that makes early financial investment produce disproportionate long-term returns operates in every domain. Fitness, skill, income, identity. The man who invests early and consistently and without the constant distraction of emotional pursuit ends up in a position that the man who distributed his energy across everything simultaneously simply cannot match. Today, you are going to understand exactly why, and why almost every man has the sequence backwards. Love feels urgent. This is the first thing to understand, not as a weakness, as a biological reality. The drive toward connection, toward romantic attention, toward the validation that comes from being chosen by someone you find genuinely compelling is one of the most powerful motivational forces the human nervous system produces. It is not a character flaw. It is not immaturity. It is the output of neural architecture that was shaped over millions of years to treat mate selection as one of the highest priority tasks a person can engage in. So when you feel that urgency, when the pull toward pursuing a connection competes with the pull toward doing the work that your long-term development requires, you are not feeling weakness. You are feeling exactly what you are supposed to feel. The question is not whether the feeling is valid. It is whether acting on it immediately at the expense of the building phase that produces everything the feeling is ultimately in service of is actually in your interest. Because urgency is emotional, leverage is structural, and these two things operate on completely different timescales. Urgency says now. It says this matters more than what I was planning to do today. It says the building can wait because this feeling will not. Leverage says later. It says the position I build during this period determines the quality of everything that follows. It says the most important thing I can do for my romantic future is not to pursue it immediately, but to become the kind of person whose pursuit means something because of what he has built. The binary between immediate validation and long-term positioning is the central tension of every young man's development, and almost every man resolves it in favor of the immediate. Not because he is foolish, because the immediate feeling is present and powerful, and the long-term position is abstract and distant and requires sustained effort in the absence of the emotional reward that romantic pursuit provides. The man who invests in himself compounds. The man who chases approval spends. And the difference between these two trajectories, which begins as a small difference in how daily energy is allocated, produces an enormous difference in life outcome over 5 and 10 years. The evolutionary logic here is worth understanding clearly because it is not just motivational framing. It is an accurate description of how selection has historically worked. For most of human history, men competed before they were selected. They built before they bonded. They established reputation, status, demonstrated competence, acquired resources, proved their value through action in the world before the question of romantic partnership was even fully on the table. This was not cruelty or unfairness. It was the natural sequence that produced the conditions under which genuine partnership could add value to both people. The man who had built something, who had a real position, who brought genuine resources and genuine capability to a partnership, was not seeking partnership out of emotional need. He was choosing it from a position of genuine optionality, and that positioned him completely differently in every subsequent negotiation. Modern culture inverted this sequence. It told men that romantic partnership is the destination toward which all other building is oriented, that you work to afford the lifestyle the relationship requires, that you develop yourself to become attractive enough to be chosen, that the romantic validation is what gives the building its meaning. This inversion produces a specific and predictable outcome. Men who seek partnership before power end up entering relationships from a position of emotional need rather than genuine optionality. Their desire for the relationship is stronger than their foundation beneath it. And that imbalance, felt by both parties even when unspoken, shapes the entire dynamic of everything that follows. Selection follows status, not the other way around. The man who builds first, who establishes genuine position before pursuing genuine partnership, enters the selection process as a chooser rather than a supplicant. His yes means something because his no is genuinely available. His interest is compelling because his life does not require the object of his interest to be meaningful. That sequence is not outdated. It is not a relic of a different era. It is still the sequence that produces the most powerful outcomes for men who have the discipline to follow it. Energy is the practical currency of this conversation, and how you allocate it determines almost everything. Chasing love costs more than people account for honestly. Not just the time of the dates, the apps, the conversations, the background processing, the portion of your cognitive and emotional bandwidth that is perpetually allocated to the romantic pursuit, even when you are not actively engaged in it. The mental energy that goes into analyzing interactions, planning approaches, wondering about outcomes, processing rejections, recalibrating after disappointments. That background processing is not free. It runs on the same resources as everything else, and in a mind that is chronically partially occupied with the low-grade, anxious monitoring of romantic pursuit. The depth of focus available for building is structurally compromised. Building requires something different. It requires isolation. Not permanent, not total, but the specific kind of mental solitude that deep work demands. The ability to sit with a difficult problem, a difficult set, a difficult financial decision, a difficult creative or professional challenge, without the emotional noise of romantic pursuit competing for the same bandwidth. The men who build fastest are the men who create the conditions that building requires, who protect their attention with enough seriousness that the work gets the full weight of their cognitive capacity rather than the remainder left over after everything else has taken its share. Scattered attention versus concentrated output. This is the binary that determines the difference between the man who makes incremental progress across a broad front of simultaneous concerns and the man who builds something genuinely significant in a specific direction. Concentrated output, sustained over time in the presence of genuine focus protection, produces results that scattered attention simply cannot match, regardless of the total hours invested. The man who disappears to build is not antisocial. He is not broken. He is not avoiding life. He is protecting the conditions that building requires because he understands, at a level that most people never examine honestly, what sustained focus actually costs and what it actually produces. The financial compounding argument has been made in other contexts, but it deserves its full weight here because the numbers are genuinely significant. The single man who is building seriously, who is living below his means with genuine intention, reinvesting aggressively, taking calculated risks with his capital and his career that shared financial obligation would make structurally harder, operates in a financial environment that is simply different from the one available to someone managing the complexity of shared financial life. He can relocate for the opportunity. He can absorb a year of below peak income while building something with genuine upside. He can put the majority of his discretionary capital into an investment or a business that has a real chance of producing disproportionate returns because the failure scenario affects only him. Compounding thrives in silence. This is not a metaphor. It is a description of the actual conditions that financial compounding requires. Consistency, the absence of the disruptions that redirect capital from investment to consumption. The ability to make financial decisions based entirely on what the long-term numbers support rather than what the immediate social or relational environment requires. Money grows best in low-drama environments. Not because drama is inherently expensive, though it often is literally, but because the cognitive and emotional state produced by chronic relational turbulence is one of the most reliable destroyers of long-term financial decision quality. The impulsive spending, the disrupted routine, the inability to maintain the patient, disciplined, long horizon orientation that genuine wealth building requires. 5 years of uninterrupted financial focus, of living lean and investing consistently and taking the risks that a single person with no floor imposed by shared obligation can take, produces a financial position that changes the entire landscape of what becomes possible, not marginally, significantly. The compounding math at that time scale is not subtle. Physical transformation operates on the same logic, and the men who have done serious physical work know this from direct experience. Hard transformations happen in uninterrupted routines. The discipline that produces genuine physical change, not casual improvement, but the kind of structural physical transformation that changes how you carry yourself, how you feel, how others respond to your presence before you say a word, requires a consistency that emotional turbulence systematically disrupts. Sleep quality, which is the foundation of physical recovery, and therefore of physical progress, is directly affected by the emotional volatility of your personal life. The chronic low-grade cortisol, elevation of relational uncertainty, of the anxiety relief cycles that early romantic involvement produces, shows up directly in recovery quality, in training performance, in the discipline that nutrition requires. Diet control, one of the most psychologically demanding aspects of physical transformation, is significantly harder to maintain in environments characterized by social pressure and emotional volatility. the shared meals that drift from your nutritional targets, the disrupted routine that makes meal preparation inconsistent, the emotional states that activate the compensatory eating patterns that undo weeks of discipline in a handful of evenings. Peace builds physique. The man whose emotional baseline is stable, whose routine is protected, whose sleep is consistent, and whose diet is controlled, makes physical progress at a rate that the man managing chronic relational turbulence simply cannot match. Not because of any difference in genetics or potential, because of the conditions in which the work is being done. And physical transformation compounds in its own right. The confidence it produces, the energy it generates, the way it changes your relationship with your own body, and therefore with the space you inhabit and the presence you project. These effects are not cosmetic. They change everything about how you move through the world. Delayed gratification is the mechanism that makes all of this possible, and it is the rarest psychological capability in the modern attention economy. Most men want immediate affection, the reassurance that they are wanted now, the validation of being chosen by someone they find compelling without having to wait, without having to build, without having to develop the position that makes that choice genuinely meaningful. So that want is human. It is not a character flaw. It is the natural response of a nervous system that has been shaped to treat social belonging and romantic selection as high priority needs. But most men act on that want at the direct expense of the position that would make its satisfaction both more available and more sustainable. They choose the immediate emotional reward over the structural development that would make future emotional rewards qualitatively different. Builders want something else. They want position. They want the security that comes from knowing that your foundation is solid, regardless of any particular person's interest in you. They want optionality, the genuine experience of having choices, of not needing any particular outcome because multiple good outcomes are available. They want the specific quality of life that can only be built through the patient, consistent, undistracted application of focused effort over time. Delayed gratification multiplies power, not as a moral principle, but as a mechanical one. The same way that deferred consumption multiplies capital. The same way that deferred physical reward. The daily discipline of training that produces no visible result for weeks before the compounding becomes visible, produces physical outcomes that immediate comfort seeking never could. The men who understand this, who have internalized it not as a concept, but as an operating principle that actually governs their daily choices, are playing a completely different game from the men around them. And the gap between their trajectories and everyone else's widens every year. When you build first, the optionality you develop changes something fundamental about your posture in every interaction. When you have genuinely built something, when your financial position is real, your physical condition is real, your skills and network and sense of direction are real, you bring a different quality to every encounter. Not arrogance, calm. The specific calm of someone whose sense of value is not stored in anyone else's response to them. You choose, you filter, you negotiate, you walk away from things that do not meet your standard without the anxious second guessing of someone who is afraid. The alternative to accepting the current option is having no option at all. The neediness that most men carry into early romantic interactions is not a personal failing. It is the natural consequence of scarcity. When your life does not feel full, when your sense of value is not internally stable, when the romantic possibility in front of you represents a meaningful portion of your current emotional wealth, you cannot be relaxed about it. You cannot be genuinely indifferent to the outcome. The stakes are too high relative to what you have elsewhere. Abundance mindset is not a reframe you apply to your current circumstances. It is the natural psychological output of having actually built an abundant life. When your days are full, when your work is meaningful, when your physical condition is something you are genuinely proud of, when your financial trajectory is moving in a clear direction, when your friendships are real and your network is valuable and your sense of purpose is settled, the romantic possibility in front of you becomes one interesting thing among many, rather than the central event your entire emotional life is oriented around. That posture is not performed. It is not a tactic. It is simply what it feels like to be a person who has built something real. Identity is perhaps the most important thing that the building phase produces, and it is the thing most at risk from premature romantic involvement. In solitude, values sharpen. The things that genuinely matter to you, stripped of the social modulation that relationships require, reveal themselves with a specificity that becomes the foundation for everything else. What you actually want to build, what you are genuinely willing to sacrifice for, what your non negotiables are. What kind of life, if you designed it entirely according to your own preferences without adjusting for anyone else's comfort, you would actually choose? Habits strengthen in the absence of the disruption that early romantic involvement consistently introduces. The 6 a.m. training session is easier to protect when no one is asking you to stay in bed. The deep work block is easier to defend when no one has a social obligation that requires your presence during it. The financial discipline is easier to maintain when no one else's preferences have legitimate claim on how you allocate resources. Vision clarifies when you're not constantly negotiating it with another person's vision. When the question of where you are going is entirely yours to answer, you answer it with a specificity that shared decision making tends to blur. You stop making vague plans that work for both of you and start making precise plans that work for the person you are actually trying to become. And that clarity of identity, once established, is the foundation from which every subsequent relationship can be entered honestly. Not with the performance of self knowledge, but with the genuine article. Not with the borrowed confidence of someone who seems together, but the grounded confidence of someone who actually is. Now, here is the honest counterweight, because this is not a simple argument, and it cannot be treated as one without becoming dishonest. Some men hide behind building. This is real, and it needs to be named directly. The building framework is powerful. It is accurate. It is the sequence that produces the best outcomes for men who apply it with genuine intention and genuine execution. And it is also one of the most comfortable rationalizations available to a man who is fundamentally afraid of the vulnerability that genuine connection requires. Building is only powerful if you are actually executing. If you are genuinely progressing in your physical condition, your financial position, your skills, your network, your sense of direction. If the building phase is producing measurable, observable, honest results that you can point to without self-deception, if you are calling it building, but what you are actually doing is avoiding the discomfort of rejection, avoiding the vulnerability of genuine investment in another person, avoiding the exposure that intimacy requires, using the language of strategic solitude to dress up what is actually fear-based isolation, then the framework is not serving you. It is protecting you from growth rather than enabling it. Strategic solitude versus fear-based isolation. The distinction is not always easy to see from the inside, but the honest question cuts through the ambiguity quickly. Are you building something real? Is your life genuinely better, measurably better, in concrete and specific ways than it was a year ago? Are you taking the risks that real development requires? Are you actually becoming someone different or simply becoming more comfortable in your current state? If the answer is yes to those questions, the building phase is working. If the answer requires significant qualification, the building phase may be avoidance wearing strategic clothing. And it is worth being clear about what this framework is not saying. Love is not the enemy. Partnership is not the obstacle. The message is not avoid connection. The message is avoid distraction before foundation. A genuine partnership, one that is entered from a position of real strength, real optionality, real mutual respect, and genuine complementarity, does not compete with a man's development. It multiplies it. Two people building in the same direction with genuine alignment and genuine mutual investment can compound each other in ways that neither could produce alone. The problem is not love. The problem is love sought before the foundation exists to support it. Love as emotional rescue from an underdeveloped life. Love as validation, substitute for the internal stability that has not yet been built. Love as the external structure that fills the absence of internal structure. That version of love does not multiply strength. It cannot because it is built on the absence of strength rather than its presence. It requires maintenance rather than producing growth. It occupies the bandwidth that development requires rather than accelerating the development. Love entered from genuine strength is a different thing entirely. It is the natural amplifier of a life that is already working. The addition of a genuine partner to a genuine project. And to get there, the project has to come first. Let's make this concrete, because the principles need to translate into actual behavior if they are going to mean anything. Set a 3-year income target, not a vague aspiration. A specific number that represents a meaningful improvement on your current position. Work backwards from it. What does the year look like? The month? The week? What skills does it require you to develop? What risks does it require you to take? Build the plan and protect the time required to execute it. Build your physique baseline, not perfection. A consistent physical practice that is genuinely part of who you are rather than something you cycle in and out of. 3 or 4 serious training sessions per week, sustained without interruption, compounded over years, produces physical results that change everything about your presence and your health and your daily energy. Develop rare skills, the capabilities that are genuinely difficult to acquire, that require sustained effort and real expertise, that make you someone whose contribution in your professional domain is not easily replaced. Rare skills produce rare leverage. Rare leverage produces rare options. Expand your male network. The serious men who are building in similar directions. The professional relationships that generate opportunity and accountability. The genuine friendships that provide belonging without the performance that social media substitutes for it. These relationships are built slowly and they compound slowly. Start building them now. Reinvest earnings aggressively during this phase. Live at a level that your financial ambition, not your current income, dictates. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is the fuel for everything else. Protect it. Protect your routine ruthlessly. Growth requires boundaries. The boundaries around your training time, your deep work hours, your financial discipline, your sleep are not rigidity. They are the structural conditions that make compounding possible. Without them, The building phase produces incremental improvement at best. With them, it produces transformation. Here is where we land. You can chase validation and stay average. You can keep allocating the majority of your energy to the pursuit of romantic attention before you have built the foundation that makes that attention meaningful and sustainable. You can spend the years that compounding needs most in the exhausting loop of pursuit and disappointment. And you can wonder, 5 years from now, why the trajectory of your life looks so similar to where it started. Or you can disappear, build, and return powerful. While others chase love, you build leverage. Not because love is not worth having, because leverage is what makes love sustainable. Because the man who returns from the building phase with a genuine foundation beneath him is not the same man who left. He is calmer. He is more capable. He is more grounded. He is genuinely, not performatively, someone worth choosing. And leverage attracts naturally, not through strategy, not through tactics, simply through the visible, felt quality of a person who has built something real and knows it. Focus, compound, return stronger, disappear, build, reappear.